What's going on, you guys? My name is Trey Lansdell. Welcome to episode 1 of a brand new podcast called The Founder's Corner. And this is a podcast that is going to be specifically geared towards young entrepreneurs and aspiring agents getting into the financial services industry, be it insurance, investments, and it'll be primarily catered towards people that are within our company, which is a great company, World Financial Group. And before I get into my background and my story, I just really want to outline the purpose of why we're doing this podcast. You see, a bit of my background before I get into the main story is when I first got into the industry, which was 9 years ago. I was a 19-year-old kid. It was 2016. It was Regina, Saskatchewan. And we were not lucky enough necessarily to come from a team where we received a lot of coaching or mentorship or training. We weren't lucky enough to really have a great example around us. We weren't lucky enough to really be blessed with an environment where people were winning at a really high level. And so at the very beginning, we really had to figure it out on our own and as we go. And as a result, we made a lot of mistakes. We stepped into more landmines than I think most people could count trying to build something in this industry. And the main reason I want to do this podcast is because I really, really feel like there's a value and a benefit and a goodness into kind of reaching down and sort of coaching you guys and teaching you guys on the way to help you guys build your business and to avoid a lot of the same mistakes that we made, learning from lessons where we went wrong, but also learning from lessons where we've done really, really, really well. Unfortunately for us, we didn't stay in that position or with that team long term. You know, now we're lucky enough to be in a team which is one of the, the top teams in Canada within our industry. We're coached and mentored by a man who I think is one of the all-time greats within our industry. And so we've managed to learn a lot more in that period of time, but we've also managed to figure out a lot of things on our own too. We've become one of the fastest growing teams within our company, within the industry here in Canada over a relatively small period of time. And so we're going to be taking a lot of that and hopefully give you guys some lessons and some ammunition and some education that you can use to build your business moving forward. Now, here's what this podcast isn't going to be. I wanted this podcast to be something where it's a lot of like tangibles and skills and not a lot of fluff and not a lot of rah-rah. I think there's a massive gap right now within our industry and even with our company where you see a lot of guys who they start up podcasts and they're talking a lot about like mindset and personal growth and development. And that's all awesome. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I know when I first started, when I was trying to get my feet off the ground and really start building this thing, I didn't really necessarily want so much personal development coaching. More so as I just wanted someone to teach me the way. I wanted someone to show me the guidelines, show me the ropes, and show me how I could really excel and grow. And so that's what this podcast is really going to be. We're going to be teaching a lot on tangibles, how to win part-time, how to make money, how to transition full-time, how to build a business, how to scale an agency, how to create culture, how to win in business as a couple. We'll get my wife on in a few episodes and we'll talk about things we do, right? And so on and so on and so on and so on. We have a lot of topics that we're going to cover to help you guys really grow to kind of address every single person within our industry and within our company. And, we'll still have some rah-rah here and there. There'll be a little bit of mindset stuff that we touch on. Don't worry about that. But that'll be the primary intention of what we're going through with this podcast. So with all that said and with all the preamble out of the way, I'll kind of give you a little bit of my background and just a quick introduction to me. And that'll be a wrap up for episode 1, just so you guys know who I am. So my name is Trey Lansdell. Like I said, I've been in the industry for 9 years, but my background and how I got started in the industry was not something that would normally necessarily scream financial services. I grew up small town Saskatchewan in a little farm town. And when I graduated high school, I was given 2 choices. And these are the same choices that every kid gets when they graduate from a small town. You can either go into the workforce or you can go into education. And I didn't really necessarily want to go into the workforce because I'll be honest with you, if I went into the trades, I was more likely to cut myself than the piece of wood or lumber they gave me. We'd already sold the family farm, so that was a no-go. And I didn't want to go into the military because I'm definitely allergic to bullets. So that was not an option for me. So I went with option 2. Went up to the University of Regina, started pursuing a degree in history. And the reason for that was pretty simple. I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a history professor. I wanted to be like Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society, like getting on top of the desk, like how do I reach these kids, that kind of thing. But I had this concept that was introduced to me, and it's a concept I always tell people about. I think it's super powerful, and I recommend you do it in every area of life that you're in, especially with your career. And the concept is interview your future. And what I mean by that is if you're in a field of work or a field of career, go and take a look at people around you that have been in that field 10, 20, 30, 40 years longer than you, right? And interview their life, audit their life, take a look at their family life, their faith life, their financial life, all of it. And you better really hope you like that picture, because chances are pretty good that'll wind up being your life too. And so I did that. I started taking a look at these tenured professors that have been around for a really, really long time. And they're all good guys. It's not an indictment of their character in any way, but they had a life that maybe necessarily didn't inspire me. Let's put it that way. And, I just couldn't wrap my head around going to school for 8 to 10 years, racking up $100,000 in student loans to work in a field where a lot of my professors were doing side jobs just to still make ends meet and pay their bills. And I thought there had to be something else. And to be honest, I never really liked school that much to begin with. So I backed away from university, dropped out after 1 year. I know that screams financial services professional. And then I lucked out. I had a friend who was in the co-op work placements with the university. So she got me a job with Gov Canada. I worked for about a year as with the residential school settlements to help residential school survivors get compensation. And, I really, really enjoyed that work. I liked that work. I thought about carrying it even further. And then one day we got a notice that Gov Canada was laying about 140 people off, and I was one of them. And I remember that feeling that day of just realizing that I never wanted to be in a position ever again where someone could take my income away like that. And it scared me. And so I lucked out. The day I got laid off, I was, in our government building, which was Hill Tower 3 in downtown Regina. There was a little restaurant at the bottom there called 2010 City Eatery. And I was, drinking my last paycheck away, having a Reader's Digest moment. And I got a phone call from a buddy of mine. And I'll never forget this phone call. I still remember where I was standing outside in the loading bay having a smoke while I was getting his phone call. And I remember he called me up, and it was by far the worst recruiting call I think I've ever received in my whole life, right? He calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Trey, I need you to come check out some money thing," right? And I'm like, oh my God, what is this dude going to get me wrapped up into? But you know what? You can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And he caught me at the absolute best possible time. I didn't want to go back to school, and I just got laid off from my job. So I wasn't super enthusiastic about going back into the workforce after getting laid off. And so I was like, I'll just hear him out. And I wasn't super easy either. He had to basically kidnap me from my home, drove me to the presentation on Park Street on the east end of Regina. I sat there in a presentation that went for an hour long. I was not super enthusiastic about it. I had all these people coming up and talking to me about what I do. And I remember sitting to this presentation for an hour, didn't understand a word of what they talked about on the financial side, but I saw it was sort of here to build a business and to help families and to educate. And that's what really intrigued me. But even still, I was a tough sell. I remember I went up to my senior partner who did the meeting at that time, my former senior partner. And I was like, "This is awesome. When are you going to sell me the Tupperware?" Right? Like, I still thought it was one of those things. And the smartest thing that they ever said to me was, they were like, "It sounds like you got a lot of questions, so why don't you go home, do your own research, and then if you're still interested, come back in tomorrow and let's do a meeting." And so I did, and I went home and I Googled everything about the company, and I looked into all the good, all the bad, and I went in the next day, and really the only question I had left after I Googled everything was, how do we get paid, right? And they broke down our comp model and what we do for families, and it blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it. And that was July 27th, 2016. And then we started to build our business. We started to build our team. We had a lot of learning lessons we had to go through. I was a young dude. I was pretty cocky. I had a lot of ego when I first started in the business, because for me, I'd never really excelled at anything in my life. I was not really good in school. I wasn't really big into sports. I'd never had that one thing that I could like sink my teeth into and really win at. And then I found that I was really, really, really good at the business. And so I started to take off right from the hop. And then I had a massive ego at the beginning, right? And so I was kind of the guy that if you started up on my team, and if you weren't here to go and build a massive business like I was, I couldn't understand what the hell was wrong with you. And so I blew you out of the team. So I'd build a team, lose a team, build a team, lose a team, build a team, lose a team, right? Get a client, lose a client, get a client, lose a client. And that was basically my business for the first 5 to 6 years. Right. And then, COVID happened. There were some transitionary things that happened. I wound up exiting that team and finding a home within a different team with a different mentor. And we wound up moving to Calgary with COVID to be a part of that office. And from May of 2022 to today, we went from $0 of income all the way to now over 200,000. right? So, and we're now across Canada and expanding into the States. And so I include that part not as, not to come off as like some big deal, because I'm really not. There's guys in our company that make 15 million a year, but I know what it's like to go from zero to hero. I know what it's like to always feel like you're spinning your tires in this business and not getting anywhere. I know what it's like to never feel like you're getting it off the ground. And then I also know what it's like to finally figure it out and start implementing certain systems and habits and things that allow you to make your business move at a really, really, really fast pace by treating it like a business. And so this podcast won't be something where I'm not going to teach you how to make $1 million a year. I don't know how to make $1 million a year yet. I'm working on it, but I'm not there yet, right? But I can teach you how to get your business off the ground and at least get you to 6 figures in a relatively small period of time. And that's what we've been doing with our guys. And so, that's why I'm really, really excited for this podcast. So without further ado, you guys, that's just my brief intro. That's who I am. That's where I came from. That's what I do. And above and beyond that, the most important thing is not the business that we've built. It's not the income that we make. It's the fact that I get to be an amazing husband. Well, I say I'm amazing, but I get to be a husband to an amazing wife, and I get to be a dad to 3 beautiful kids. And that's really what I'm most proud of, and being able to do it with them and building a business with them and being able to be present in their lives. And more so than anything, that's what I care the most about. And that's why I'm doing this. And I want this podcast to be a reflection of that, because you guys all have reasons why you got into this industry for yourselves. Right? You might be doing it for you. You might be doing it for your spouse. You might be doing it for your kids. You might be doing it for whoever, but you have reasons. And those reasons all have a dollar figure attached to them for what you're able to do and how you're able to provide for them. And you can't accomplish those goals or provide for those reasons if you're not making the money you set out to make. So I really, really hope that we bring a lot of value to you guys with this podcast, and we're able to really teach you guys a bunch of things that can get you guys off the ground and get you to a really strong position financially and consistently. So appreciate you guys. This was episode 1. I can't wait for the next few episodes. It's going to be chock full of value and a ton of education, and we hope it really helps you. So take care, you guys. Thanks for tuning in.